So ensuring going forward that we also look at our parks and our open space, our public realm, to ensure that they are also a safe environment for all residents, but particularly women as well.
If I may, just to be quite clear.
Was there another answer?
I just wanted to pick up on the, if I may, just to pick up on the, if I may, I'm conscious of time now, okay, and pick up on the issue of the relationship with the faith communities. And the framework was outlined to us, but are there particular issues that they've raised with you that we should take note of this meeting?
Certainly some of the discussions we've had around some of the churches is around stop and search and safety young people. Right. And in relation to the Women's Safety Charter, fully supportive of it. I was a bit sceptical to start, if I'm honest, but having watched the launch and seeing what it's about, I think it was a fantastic initiative that I actually spoke to other borough commanders in the South London about. You should have a look at this because it could be very good for you. I don't know enough about the outputs leading to the outcomes yet. So I need to read up on that a little bit more as to what it's actually achieving in reality on the ground before I was able to comment more comprehensively on where we go from here. But certainly the concept is wonderful.
In terms of the issues faith leaders have raised with us, from their perspective, they've raised issues of premises, they've raised issues of planning permission, they've raised issues of them feeling that they do have an avenue to raise their concern within the council structure itself. But they've also said that they've actually been waiting for us to reach out to them. They would want to work with us. They see, certainly a lot of them see themselves as a conduit to members of our community, and that they are willing to work with us to address some of the challenging issues in which we have. We spoke about the forum, the police forum for Afro-Caribbean churches. They had suggested that they would be willing to host a conference to talk about knife crime issues, and that's something which Xander's faith engagement officers is working with them on. And it's more issues like that that I think we can find a common ground, and we can better keep our communities safe.
Carl, you indicated?
Yeah, just very quickly. There's an issue that it's interesting to hear the police talk about education and outreach to various communities in order to prevent crime. And I think there's an issue that's sort of been growing in publicity recently, which is the issue of gay men who use drugs for sort of very long parties where they have like lots of quite risky, engaging in quite risky sexual behaviour. And I think it particularly is an issue amongst quite a lot of young, vulnerable men. I think it's largely a public health issue, but I think it is also an issue of public safety, community safety, because it's a community, I think, that maybe could be overlooked because it's not generally seen maybe as vulnerable. And I just wondered if there's whether there's anything more that the council could do to protect that group of people, whether there's anything more that the police could do to protect that group of people, or whether you see it as more of a public health issue.
I know the drug that you're referring to, and I don't think it's just restricted to the gay community, to be honest. Yeah. But I think it's probably more prevalent in the gay community. If I was going to make an assessment without, on what I know about it so far, but it is very much coming to our awareness. Obviously, there's a criminality aspect of it, and that would be something that we would enforce. But I do think primarily it's public health because it is around education and. But if there was any information that led us to the dealers of any illegal substance, we'd be keen to embrace that and run with it as much as we possibly could. There's some challenges there, but ultimately, I don't know enough about it, evidence-based about it, in order to make a sound, give you a sound response on that. I think awareness, education, public health, I think is really important, and there's a role for us, definitely enforcement, but I can't see that yet. It's not been raised as an issue for us yet.
think certainly from a community point of view, and I think that this is perhaps an issue which can be brought to the Southwark LGBT Forum agenda, and the LGBT Forum can lead on ways in which we as a community can address it, and certainly as a lead cabinet member for community safety, I'm willing to work with the LGBT Forum in looking at ways in which the council can support addressing the issue.
Okay, final question from Eleanor. Then I've got one on Twitter, and I think we've got some students in tonight, so if anyone's got a quick one as well, I'm happy to take one there, so have a little think and we'll get back to you in a minute. Eleanor?
So, also on drugs, every single ward panel I ever go to, I take away concerns about drug dealing and drug use, particularly on large housing estates, and I just wondered how combating that is progressing, if it's getting worse, getting better.
It's very difficult to say whether it's getting worse or getting better. What I can say is that our partnership tasking process does look at that sort of behaviour, because the concern of the community is therefore a concern to us. I've got a dedicated team that will proactively target that, and we've had quite a large number of successes. I would suggest we're probably more successful than a number of other London boroughs because of our investment in that proactive police work. So you know, it's difficult to say whether or not it's getting better or worse, but I do personally feel that we're putting a proportionate amount of resources into tackling it. There's different levels, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, just to add, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, because it actually depends on which estate you're looking from. If you speak to some estate in some parts of Southwark, they'll probably tell you it's getting worse. But I can also probably point to 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 estates who would probably have a positive experience about how both the joint enforcement between the council and the police have been able to resolve the issue. I think for some, in some area, it has been an issue that you have a particularly taxing group to look at the issue, but you get it resolved, but it just gets displaced to elsewhere. It doesn't actually fully address the issue, and even sometimes when you do address the issue through the enforcement route, and they get a lenient sentence in court, and they're back on the street again. So there are multiple challenges in terms of how you offer a long-term solution about this, and some of the long-term solution, I think from our perspective, is actually how do you get them support in order to, if it is addiction that they have with the substance itself, how do you beat the addiction? How do you get educated information out about the dangers of using this kind of drugs? Because there's still far too many people who think that it's okay and it's cool to use those drugs.
Can I just make another point, and I'll be interested in your views. I know this is probably going against protocols here, but we've got quite a high proportion of drug stop and searches. It ranges between 55 and 60%, which some people tell me is too high, some people are comfortable with it. The argument being that we should be doing more on weapons and neighbourhood crime, stolen property. But you know, bear in mind, I said earlier, we do quite a high number of stop and search compared to other boroughs, and a proportionately higher chunk of that is down to drugs. How do you feel about where that sits, 55 to 60% of our stop and searches for drugs?
Okay.
Am I allowed to put you on the spot?
Yes.
I think
Round the table, start with Carl.
I think I'd be more interested in going up. I think probably those people that are caught with drugs are probably users rather than dealers, and I think I would be more interested in going after dealers than users. Which links back to my last question actually, because I wouldn't be interested in criminalising people who were engaging in that activity, but I would be interested in engaging people who are making a lot of money out of it, and exploiting vulnerable people.
We don't often criminalise them. It's often a warning, and we often find knives and weapons during those drug searches. Point taken.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've said I take it away from every ward meeting, but it isn't the same problems. And actually, I think our locals are really good at taking the information they get from things like ward panel meetings and making arrests. And they've had loads of success stories. I mean, they've found cannabis swaps and things like that. Fantastic. But the actual amount, it's in different places, but the amount of complaints seems to be the same. And I think maybe it's not necessarily lots of stop and search, it's targeting those kind of, what Chris was saying about having a presence. It's that people don't deal in a playground because they know that there might be a police officer nearby, and I think it's that. You know, I don't know if the answer to that is stop and search, but I think there's something there about not stopping everybody, but having a more targeted presence.
Martin.
I suppose I think I totally agree with Carl. Although I'm being a bit old now, but I don't understand why it is that there's so much, the level of drug availability on the street is so high. You know, it makes no sense to me. So it's just that we need to be targeting the wholesalers, those who are making a great deal of money out of it. Those who are getting £5, £10, you know, okay, they shouldn't do it, but the fact that they can access it is the problem. And I suppose my last point of this would be that if you were to say to us that it's a far more efficient way to identify criminals, okay, than going after gang leaders who are wholesaling the products into the country, then that would allow us to make an informed opinion. But at the moment, someone who's stealing £10 versus someone who's making £1 million, I want to go for the person who makes £1 million out of it, because he's actually doing far more harm than someone who's stealing £10, who could easily redirect that person to some other activity.
So, from Camberwell, I'll say we have a lot of low-level antisocial behaviour that we've worked very hard with the officers to deal with. But the open sort of smoking of skunk in the street gives the impression that people get away with low-level crime, because I think it's a respect thing for me, is around openly flaunting the law. There seems to be a badge of honour attached to it. There seems to be an assumption that they won't get caught, and actually when they do, it sends the message that the lower level annoyance stuff is not tolerated as well, and I think it's really useful actually to. But like Carl, wouldn't want to see people criminalised for possession as a priority over dealing, because obviously we have a big problem with that as well.
Yeah, I agree with Tom. Quite a significant amount of ASB in Chaucer is linked to drug use, smoking of cannabis on stairwells, etc. So don't necessarily have a problem with that 50-60% stop and search. I guess the way I would approach it would be what kind of results are you getting from that stop and search, and what proportion of the people stopped are either in possession of drugs or as you said, knives, weapons, etc. I'd be interested in what are the results you're getting from that turnover rate. And just to echo Tom's words, I guess if you're not stopping and searching people and encouraging people to not openly consume cannabis or other substances on the street, then I imagine the rates of use would go up, which would be a bad thing.
Chris?
Yes, I suppose the whole concept of stop and search worries me a little bit, because under what circumstances do you stop and search somebody? I'm surprised that it's such a high percentage is looking for drugs, because I share all your views that if you find somebody with a small quantity of drugs, what do you then do about that? And you say you just give them a warning, but I'm not sure what that achieves. The whole thing about stop and search, I'm just interested to know under what circumstances you stop and search anybody. What triggers off that this person needs to be stopped and searched.
Damien?
Interesting, we all know how the drug operations happen in our wards. In Grange and South Bermondsey, they've got much more upmarket. They're mobile. They have a drive-through service now at the Blue. That's right. And I can point out the 15-year-old kid that does the deliveries and whatever, and he's not the kid that you're wanting to go after. Obviously, it's the ones he's looking up to, and the ones further up the tree. I'm a liberal. I'm probably a bit more relaxed about drug taking than probably a lot of people, but at the same time, I agree with the sentiments that you need to go for the people who are the real criminals, obviously, and not these teenagers that think they're bigger than what they are.
I would stress that it's a multi-phased approach we do. There is a role definitely in targeting the people who are at that end of the scale. And sometimes your quick wins are the being seen by the public, dealing with the people who are dealing. You do find other things. People do, if they're repeatedly caught, then they will be criminalised, but obviously there's a phase up to that. And we've got the highest rate of community resolutions in the whole of London, which is a low level of confronting the behaviour for low level crimes. So I'm quite supportive of that as an alternative method. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Well, that was interesting, us being scrutinised for once.
Can I come back and do that again?
Not on camera, no. So one from Twitter, again quite specific. It says, may I ask why dispersal orders for people drinking Druid Street are not applied? That's the little microbreweries and things along there. So it says, when people get drunk along there, there's no dispersal orders, but if it was a pub, they would be dispersed. Rich, poor, equal, which I'm going to take to mean that they feel that this is more, that dispersal orders therefore are more discriminatory against lower income establishments than the places with the sort of high end microbreweries.
Hipsters.
Yeah, hipsters. So why do you have the hipsters, Michael?
I mean, in terms of dispersal power, it's certainly something for the police to put in place rather than the council itself. But residents can be rest assured that certainly from the council's perspective and in all my dealings with the police and Xander, there is no differentiation between kind of like an hipster area and kind of like a lower income residential area. We treat all areas in sort of equally. We think it's important that all the residents, irrespective of their level of income or their background, are able to enjoy a very safe environment and are able to carry on their business itself. And certainly, I certainly have been challenging the police and all those who do have the necessary to think about using their wide range of tools. The issue about dispersal powers is that it is temporary. It's not a long-term fix itself, and sometimes you've got to have a balanced judgment as to whether you expend some effort in going through the dispersal power or the kind of like routes, which is very temporary, compared to something where you look at a more holistic long-term solution. But certainly those are discussions which I continue to have with Xander and the local police service.
It's slightly disappointing that someone would think or suggest that we look at income and we put these things in place. There is no strategy around it. It's led by community feeling locally, and it's one of a number of options we've got to target whatever the issue may be. So I can't, I'm not going to talk about the individual places, but it could be that we apply a power because it suits us to achieve that aim, or another power could suit for something else. And if you're talking about premises rather than people in the street, then it's quite often easier to target the premises under the licensing laws than it is with the dispersal power.
Thank you very much. I did promise a quick question from the back. Do any of you have a question you'd like to ask? Yes.
There was a figure for 2013 to 2014 about knife crime, that only 16% of them were solved in Southwark. I was just wondering if you have any up-to-date figures on that and why it was so difficult to solve knife crime between 2013 to 2014 and how you improved that.
It's a disappointing statistic. I can give you the figure in a start, but it's not much better than that. 16% for the year to date. But those knife crimes are not always knife crimes used. Sometimes they're seen, sometimes they're robberies where you've got suspects and victims who don't know each other. You've got uncooperative victims in a large number of other offences. It's something that it specifically sits with my detective super to try and improve. He's got that as a specific action from me, so I've set that at a high level, being pretty clear to my staff that we need to improve that.
Any follow-ups? No. Thank you very much. Thank you, Xander. Thank you, Michael. That's been really illuminating and interesting. We will continue to watch very closely, and what is a difficult time for yourselves and a very difficult time for us at the council as well. And thank you for coming, and we will very quickly move on to a couple of other things we've got to